Some stories feel true because they start with fears we all know. The fear that the ground beneath our feet isn't as solid as we think, or that a simple addition to our backyard might invite something from the deep. Welcome to 3 a.m. Horror Audio. Back in the late 80s, out in a quiet stretch of rural Louisiana, my family lived about a half-mile from the Pearl River. It was a long trek through the humidity just to get down there for a wash or to cool off at the end of the day. So my grandfather decided to make life easier. He hired a crew to dig a massive rectangular pond right behind the house. It was supposed to be a luxury, but something about that water was off. There was this one spot on the southern bank. If you laid down flat on the grass, pressed your ear to the warm dirt, and looked out across the water, the trees and the neighbor's barn would just disappear. In their place, you'd see a violent, churning gray ocean, massive waves, white foam, a storm that wasn't happening in our world. But the second you stood up, it was just a quiet, still pond again. No one could explain it, but we all saw it. Then the neighbors started talking. The families living in the small houses between our land and the river said they couldn't sleep. They heard this heavy, wet, sliding sound. Shh, 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 moving directly under their floorboards at night. Their houses would actually tremble like something massive was pushing through the silt beneath them. We looked at the ground and found the trail, a long raised crack in the earth, like a giant pipe had been forced through the mud, running in a straight line from the riverbank all the way to our pond. My Aunt Sarah was a woman of habit. Every morning at 3:30 a.m., she'd head out to the pond for her morning prayers and to fetch water. Usually, my Uncle Jim went with her, but one night he was exhausted after a long day of work. Sarah decided she'd be fine on her own. As she walked toward the water, she reached that strange raised fissure in the dirt. Just as her foot hovered over the crack, the ground began to heave. A massive pitch-black shape rose out of the earth right in front of her. In the pale moonlight, she saw this hulking, slick body covered in something that shimmered like oil. It had matted curly hair and eyes that glowed a dull ember red, like two dim lights burning in the dark. She didn't stay to see the rest. She screamed and didn't stop running until she was behind a locked door. But the worst part happened in broad daylight. Sarah's 3 sisters-in-law went down to the pond around noon. The youngest, Lucy, was terrified of deep water. She'd never learned to swim. She stayed right on the edge, barely ankle-deep, using a cup to splash herself. Suddenly, she let out a shriek. Something had grabbed her. Right there, in front of everyone, she was being dragged into the center of the pond by an invisible force. Her sisters scrambled into the water, grabbing her arms, her clothes, a desperate tug of war against something beneath the surface that simply would not let go. When the neighbors finally helped haul her back to the grass, she was shivering and gasping for air. And on both of her ankles were deep, angry red marks, the perfect bruised shape of 2 massive, heavy hands. My grandfather didn't wait. He ordered the pond to be closed immediately. We spent weeks dumping old timber, thorny brush, and tons of dirt into that hole until it was level with the rest of the yard. The pond is gone now. It's just a flat patch of grass in the backyard. But to this day, no one in the family will walk over that spot after the sun goes down. Because once you've invited something to move beneath your home, you can never be sure if it truly left. 3 a.m. Horror Audio. If you have a fear that keeps you up at night, share it with us at mishhorm42@gmail.com. It might inspire our next story. Like and subscribe for new nightmares every week. Stay safe out there. All stories are original fiction inspired by real fears. Any resemblance to actual events is purely coincidental.